Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers. Now, sometimes we talk about a controversial subject, and other times we have interesting guests. And sometimes we have an interesting guest talk about a controversial subject, and that's today's show.
It is indeed, and sometimes we get back to our roots of being called The Verdict.
That's right.
And we allow our viewers or invite them to get on our website and vote which way they think some issue ought to come out, and we're going to do that today. We're going to have Dr. Mike Anderson, the president of the Presbyterian Health Foundation, talk about the ethics of embryonic stem cell research. About 60 days ago, as you may recall, we did a show on the science of stem cell research, not talking whether you should do it or not, but just talking about how you do it and what the difference between adult and embryonic stem cell research was. And today we're going to get right into the ethics, the morality of it, whether you should do it or not do it. From that standpoint, we're going to have somebody who knows a lot about it talk to us.
The ethics of embryonic stem cell research, coming up on today's Verdict.
For one Oklahoma-based company, success didn't happen overnight. Initially, the days were long, 80-hour weeks common. As we grew, we wanted to share our success, and the ideals of corporate and civic responsibility found a welcome home. Today, we're the largest investor in the Sooner State and a source for exciting, new, high-quality jobs. We're Chesapeake Energy, committed to building a better Oklahoma.
All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. For more information, call 23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
Here at Diffie Ford Lincoln Mercury, located on I-40 just west of the Metro, we are expanding our entire product line.
That's right, Aunt Chris. We have 5 incredible groups of imports. We have Toyota, Honda, Nissan, Kia, and Hyundai.
The selection and our prices have never been better than right now.
It's true, because we have prices slashed for this new group of pre-owned imports.
Come out today and experience our new variety of cars with the Diffie family difference.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Kent's going to introduce today's guest.
Very pleased today to have Dr. Michael Anderson join us. Dr. Anderson is the president of the Presbyterian Health Foundation and has been for the last several years. He grew up in Spokane, Washington, went to Whitworth College and played basketball there. And if we had Mike stand up, you'd understand why he was such a good basketball player, very tall gentleman. He went to seminary at San Francisco Theological Seminary, got a Ph.D. at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland. For 25 years was a senior minister at Westminster Presbyterian Church in Oklahoma City, and as I said, has been for the last several years the president of the Presbyterian Health Foundation. He's had much experience in the area of stem cell research and the ethics and morality of embryonic stem cell research. Perfect guest for this topic to cover both sides. Mike, thanks for joining us. We're sure pleased you're here.
It's good to be here. Thank you.
Mike, what is the Presbyterian Health Foundation?
The Presbyterian Health Foundation funds medical research in Oklahoma, primarily at the University of Oklahoma and the Oklahoma Medical Research Foundation. And we fund translational research, and that is the formation of science companies who take discovery from the laboratory and put the product to the market.
So benefactors put money into the foundation, and the foundation distributes that money?
Yes, and our primary corpus was formed by the sale of the Presbyterian Hospital in 1985. And it was from that start that we began the foundation's work in funding medical research. And we now have a research park with over 1,000 employees, over 500,000 square feet of Class A wet lab, and office space for biotech companies, 36 different tenants are now in the park, and it's full. We have 6 buildings, and we are designing the 7th today as we speak.
Well, just generally in Oklahoma City, where is it located?
It's between Lincoln and the I-235, bordered by 8th and 4th Street, right next to the university.
Mike, we had Jim Tomasak, Dr. Tomasak, on about 65 days ago to do a show on the science of stem cell research, both adult and embryonic stem cell research. But that's been a while. Can you refresh our viewers on what we're talking about, what we mean when we talk about stem cell research, and particularly embryonic stem cell research?
It wasn't until 1998 that the embryonic stem cell was discovered to have a totenpotent or pluripotent cell that are non-differentiated, and they can be guided into any number of the tissue cells of the human body as they grow. And so it suddenly became an opportunity for therapeutic cloning of cells to, say, replace neural cells, say in a diseased brain with Parkinson's or Alzheimer's, or in spinal cord injury. And so it's a very new science based on molecular and cell biology, and a very recent discovery with great opportunity for treating deadly human disease.
Now, you've had some personal involvement in advising legislative bodies and the like about what kind of legislation might be appropriate, have you not? You've served on some committees.
I was on a national committee overseeing the work. It was called the Commission on Public Representation for the National Institutes of Health. The first one that ever existed is formed by a U.S. Senate Act of 1996. And 20 people from across the country are on this oversight commission. And from that, I was also appointed to a U.S. Senate committee on what was called the Pluripotent Stem Cell Research Project.
Well, what do those conversations involve?
Those conversations first involve the science of what is taking place, and then the ethical issues. And of course, the ethical issues then were brought to the forefront in the elections of the year 2000 and 2004. And those issues were very sharp, and we suddenly saw backgrounds of different church groups having different perspectives and different faith communities, because the Islamic and the Jewish communities have a very specific statement regarding stem cell research, as does the Hindu community, as they've discussed this in legislation in India.
Is it an R&D issue? Are Republicans generally aligned one way and Democrats typically aligned another way?
It really isn't. It really comes down, and I would have to say that there's a consistency on the part of the Roman Catholic Church, which 130 years ago decided, in answering the question, when does life begin? It begins the moment of conception. And science and others haven't always defined human life in just those regards, and nor has the religious community. For example, the Talmud, which was the discussion of the rabbinate for centuries at the time of Christ, eventually formed into a written Babylonian Talmud, was written in the 5th or 6th century. The discussion there between the rabbis decided that a human being began after 40 days. And up to that point, it was simply called a being in the water, meaning, of course, the water of the womb. But they understood, because of miscarriages and other things they witnessed, that there wasn't a formation until approximately 40 days. So anyhow, they had decided. If you went to Israel today, you'll find a lot of embryonic stem cell research that is governed by law not for reproducing human beings, but only for therapeutic cloning of cells.
Mike, let me just say, for the benefit of our viewers, we ask you to come on and present both sides of the for and against positions, which we'll do after the break. But before we get to that, please tell our viewers, what is the fight about? put it down on an individual
Okay.
viewer level, and why are some people vehemently opposed to it, and why are some people in favor of it?
The fight would be about if you defined human life as starting at the moment of conception, then you are actually discarding or destroying certain embryonic cells in order to do embryonic therapeutic cloning. And they would say it's not unlike abortion. That's one side, and that's the side taken by the Catholic Church in America. The other side would say, but that's not the case. No abortion is created in order to get therapeutic embryonic cells for this process. They all come from a process that has extra cells that are otherwise discarded, and that's, of course, in vitro fertilization. And so that needs to be very clearly discussed as part of the ethical basis of this discussion, which we'll be glad to do.
Well, so the embryonic stem cells that are used for the research come from as being excess through the in vitro process.
In vitro fertilization process. As you know, in that process, these are the most pro-life people you could possibly find. These are couples, American couples in our country, throughout the world, who simply have tried and tried and tried to have a baby. They've prayed about it. They've done everything they can. They've done all of the fertility tests, and they find they have a good eggs, they have a good sperm, the husband and wife, but they simply can't have a baby. So the in vitro process is a pretty simple one, but the results are an extra number of fertilized eggs. And it works like this. There will be a luprin given to a woman to stop her cycle. And then she begins for a 28-day period taking two kinds of drugs. One is phalocin, which is taken, I believe that one's in the morning, and Reponex is taken at night. And these are injections, and the couple does this together, and it goes on for 28 days, and this causes a super ovulation. And the ovulation takes place rather than one egg being produced. You could have 10 or 12 or 16. And then those eggs are harvested by the doctor and placed in a petri dish. At that point then, at that time, the husband's sperm is added so that all of those eggs would have an opportunity of being coupled with the husband's sperm. Out of that process, there may be 12 of those eggs that survive that are fertilized. And then the physician, scientist, and the couple together with a microscope will study those and say the two strongest ones would be these. And they even classify them as A, B, and C type of fertilized eggs.
Some sort of survival of the fittest.
And it becomes a natural selection.
Mm-hmm.
And they pick their two best, and that's one reason in vitro fertilization process often has twins or even triplets. You'll see a lot more triplets around today.
I need to jump in here and get us to a break.
Yes.
I know you're kind of right in the middle of that
that's
explanation, but we'll come back and pick it up right there. Mike Anderson, we're discussing the ethics involving embryonic stem cell research. You're watching The Verdict, and we'll be right back.
Good.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information. American Express Tax and Business Services. We're accountants. We do taxes, business valuations, estate planning, and consulting. And we're right here in Oklahoma, working with the owners of small and medium-sized businesses. Steve Wilsey and Stuart Meyer have the resources and the experience. American Express Tax and Business Services. In Oklahoma City, the phone number is 405-843-5311.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett and Kent Myers. As always, our guest this week is Mike Anderson. He's the president of Presbyterian Health Foundation. We're discussing the ethics involved in embryonic stem cell research, and we kind of left off. Mike was kind of right in the middle of the point. Kent, where do you want him to pick up?
I'd like for you to pick up, if you don't mind, right where you were. We had hypothetically had 10 eggs, 2 of which had been selected and 8 of which had not. Can you carry on from there?
Well, in case somebody just picked up in the program, we'll say these are 10 eggs that came from in vitro fertilization.
Yes.
This isn't Easter. And so consequently, what happens, I have a little petri dish. It's no larger than the top of this cup. And these eggs are fertilized there. The doctor and the husband and wife will pick out the 2 eggs that, let's say, they insert 2 in her uterus for pregnancy. And they pick out the strongest. And they actually help the doctor pick those out. So in a sense, you're choosing your future child or children. But then there are, in this case, 8 eggs left over. Those eggs are put in cryopreservation. And cryos just comes from the simple Greek word cryos, which means frozen. And so they're frozen according to the procedures followed here in Oklahoma for 5 years. During that, 2 things can happen during that 5-year period of time. You could adopt those eggs out to a couple that wants them if the couple that owns them agrees and the doctor say it's viable. That's possible. And those are called snowflake babies, and there is an adoption agency here in Oklahoma trying to adopt out all of those. Well, there's tens of thousands of those across the country every year, hundreds of thousands, as a matter of fact, across the country every year, because there's over 12,000 in vitro fertilizations per year, and it's increasing now. So we probably have between 100 to 200,000 of eggs right now in cryopreservation process. So at the end of 5 years, the mother will be called, and her child is now 5 years old, or twins, and she'll be called by the agency, the physician, and said, you will be given these eggs back at an unfavorable time. Those are the words that are used. And that means when your menstruation starts, come in that day. The remaining eggs are placed in the mother and they're discarded by nature, through the menses, of course. That's the present system. The alternative to this, if that mother and father wish to have their eggs used for science to save life, those embryonic stem cells, rather than being discarded by the tens of thousands every year in this country, because not all countries are doing this, may be used for research in very significant areas to save life.
Let me just ask you to, in just about a minute, if you can, what are the arguments in favor of using the eggs for research?
Well, the best arguments right now is the best science available for finding a cure for Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and spinal cord injury, including ALS. And those are processes going forward right now in other countries: South Korea, Singapore, Japan, China, India, and Great Britain and France. And one of the leading countries in the world in advanced stem cell research right now is Spain. 99% Catholic. It voted to federally sponsor stem cell research in the universities in Spain.
Yeah. Well, so why not do it? What's the other side of the morality issue? Why would someone say we should not be using these embryos
because
for
they are
embryonic stem cell
afraid.
research?
Sometimes it's a misunderstanding. Some believe they're supporting non-abortion issues by this. Because they think abortion is involved, where in fact abortion is not involved here. These are only in vitro fertilization eggs that would otherwise be discarded. So there is no abortion. And they have a very strong faith that life starts at the moment of fertilization, and therefore it shouldn't be tampered with at that moment.
Is it this simple that if life starts at conception, according to the doctrine that you've indicated, and we have 8 eggs that have been fertilized but not implanted, that the opponents would say that's life, and you're destroying life when you do this?
Right. And in fact, they are destroyed in a natural process purposefully by human will and decision inserted in the mother at the time of menstruation.
Is sometimes embryonic stem cell research clouded by the cloning controversy?
Yes, definitely. People are afraid that you're going to have reproductive cloning, as Dolly the sheep. And of course, no scientist of any ilk has ever espoused that. And nations that have set up laws regarding nuclear transfer or cloning have already set up laws against reproductive cloning. America still has to come to that point. We have in some states. We do not have federal laws at this moment.
You've got a program coming up, I understand. Tell us a little bit about that, what's going to be involved.
Well,
We've got about 30 seconds, Mike. Just
yes, it's on genetics, and certainly one of the large areas of genetics is this area of stem cell research and its capacity for saving life.
And where will that be?
And that will be at the Health Science Center, University of Oklahoma.
And coming up soon?
Yes, within the next 30 days, and I forgot which day, thank you.
That's all right. Mike Anderson is the president of Presbyterian Health Foundation. He's been here discussing the ethics and morality involved in embryonic stem cell research. Mike, I've learned a lot, and I know our viewers have too. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, it's good to be with you.
Thank you. We're going to give them a chance to vote here in a little bit.
Good.
Kent and I'll be back with the final word and let you know how you can check in on this issue when we return.
Okiwani is an Indian name for a place where children play. When we obtained the camp, we found a lot of oil debris left in the woods. We saw a commercial about how the oil and natural gas industry cleans up old oil well sites. We called the OERB and they agreed to remove tons of concrete and steel. It didn't cost us a thing. Thousands of children have left their footprints on this land. Thanks to the oil and gas industry, they will for a long time to come.
Bringing out the best in each student. That is the simple goal and tradition of Heritage Hall. The focus on the individual shapes the educational experience at Heritage Hall. Each student benefits from small classes, able, dedicated teachers, a solid academic curriculum, and exceptional co-curricular programs of athletics, arts, community service, and other activities, parental involvement, personalized counseling, and the development of responsibility, integrity, and love of learning. If you want education taught with pride, then you want Heritage Hall.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett and Kent Myers here to wrap up a show on embryonic stem cell research and the moral and ethics involved.
Yeah, our viewers are, I'm sure, more enlightened about it. I know I am from hearing Mike Anderson talk about some of it, and of course reflecting back on Dr. Thomas' explanations on the prior show. We're now going to get back to our roots about the verdict. We're going to we have posted on our website a question: should we do embryonic stem cell research? Be very interested in knowing what your thought is about it. All you have to do is go in, get under opinion polls, and click yes or no, and record your vote, and we will announce the vote on the next show. Yes, theverdict.tv. Go there and click on opinion polls and vote. We want to know what your verdict is on this very serious and important question.
You can also go to that website to tell us about a future guest you'd like to see on The Verdict. And you can reach Mike Anderson at PHF, that's Presbyterian Health Foundation, but phfokc.com. More information on what they have to offer. Nice show. Thanks to Mike Anderson. Thanks to you, Kent. We'll see you next week on The Verdict.
The preceding program was produced by the Production Services Group at Cox Communications, exclusively for the Cox Channel.